diagnosis, which is terribly exciting, severe hemophilia A, huh? How about that? You did mention, you told me a great story about this time where you were swimming and there was an incident that came up and sort of a major takeaway from that. Would you mind sharing that story with everybody?
3 years ago, my first day at camp, Mom was nervous to send me alone. My nurse Noelle, shout out to her, she talked my mom into letting me go, and the first, I think, 3 days was okay, and then we go swimming, and there's this U.S. Olympic gold medalist at water polo, and he tries to teach us water polo. Well, I'm a goalie, and there's like a little brick lining, and it's not like the soft brick, it's like the hard, sharp corner brick, and this kid throws a ball, hits me in the face, and I crack the back of my head on the pool. I blow it off, naturally, because I was 12 at the time.
And when you crack your head open, really, it's not that big a deal.
No, not at all. So I go on. I probably go to the med shed 3 times before I'm just like getting Tylenol, and I'm just like, I can't do this. I couldn't eat because I was so like nauseous from it. And so I go to the med shed, and Noelle's like, why have you been down here so many times? And I was like, well, I kind of cracked my head on the pool. She's like, what? And so she runs, grabs my medicine, they call the doctor, he looks at me, I go get a CT scan at the local Excelsior Springs Hospital, and yeah, it was quite memorable.
You shared something with me, though, that I think is extremely important, a major takeaway from that for you.
Don't blow it off. If you think that it's bad, get it looked at. Don't wait until it's like super bad to go get it looked at.
So your son Oliver has hemophilia as well, turns 4 this August, right? Jacob's story, where there were a lot of challenges with regard to having hemophilia right off the bat, quite different for you, yes?
Oliver came crashing into this world, made it very memorable. We don't have a family history of hemophilia, at least not a known family history. When he was born, the first day everything was fine. By the second day of life, all hell had broken loose, basically. What happened was they used an internal fetal monitor on his head, to monitor the heart rate and stuff while I was going through labor. After he was born, there was just a small spot that was bleeding, and throughout the day, it just kind of kept oozing and oozing and oozing. And eventually, my husband finally pulled the nurse aside, I think, and said, we've got to do something about this. So they stitched it up. It stopped. We thought everything was okay, but then the heel prick that they do on kids started oozing as well. So his foot started oozing. They'd also pricked the other heel. That also started oozing. So my kid is oozing from everywhere. By the next morning, he ends up in the NICU because they just wanted to kind of monitor him. He had started to lose, a decent amount of blood by this point. They put a central line into his belly button, back through the umbilical, basically where the umbilical cord was. And that started oozing as well. We found a bunch of blood in his diaper. It was all very scary. They ended up transferring him to Children's Hospital. On the way there, he was receiving a blood transfusion. As we walk into Children's Hospital, they had sent the blood work off and came back with this diagnosis of hemophilia. They started infusing factor immediately. In our house, we like to say that all of the holes plugged up at once. Once they diagnosed and then gave him factor, everything just kind of stopped. He'd been bleeding from everywhere, and it all just kind of stopped.
Once you kind of got a handle on, okay, hemophilia, that's how we handle this now, then you got another curveball. He had an inhibitor as well.
Yes. Oliver is full of curveballs. So at 10 months, he had surgery, had a port put in, and a couple weeks after that, doing regular blood work, they discovered he had an inhibitor. So yeah, then that's our next, what? Wait a minute, I figured out what hemophilia is. What is this? There's another level to this. The second the blood work came back the next day, we started tolerance therapy. So we started daily infusions the day after we discovered that he had an inhibitor. It took about 9 months of tolerance, daily infusions, and then the inhibitor went to 0 and has been 0 now for a couple years since.
How much of a role did the community and your relationship to the chapter play in your acclimating to this life?
The first walk was about Oliver was 8 weeks old, so we brought Oliver to the walk, and that was our first chance to meet other parents, which was great for us to hear stories and watch other kids running around, having lots of fun at the walk. 3 days before the weekend conference that year is when we found out about the inhibitor. So we showed up here, and everybody just kind of embraced us, and we're like, what is this? And people were telling us, what to expect. The inhibitor summit was already full. But somebody here, I think one of the vendors or something said, hey, let me make a phone call, we'll get you guys into the Inhibitor Summit. And so a month later, we're going. So absolutely, without that connection.
Yeah, it really helps just to understand, okay, other people are going through
Right.
this, I'm not alone, especially in this community. I feel it's a very empowered, motivated, advocacy-based community. So Sam Underwood, you don't have a bleeding disorder.
I just deal with blood in my job a lot, but no, I don't have a bleeding disorder, no.
You do, so Dexter, the following, and then a suspected murderer on Homeland. You do have like a weird relationship to blood and death, huh?
It's just fascinating to me. Yeah. Like, thought I fit in pretty well. Like,
Yeah.
I come along and I've been incredibly lucky to play some very complex and interesting people that deal with mass murder a lot. So yeah, that's been something I've been very, very lucky to do over the last couple of years. The interesting thing I'm dealing with now is that people have an idea of who I am and what I do based on these kind of very kind of wonderful and interesting and very satisfying jobs that I got on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step, the what's next is kind of trying to work that out. So
Yeah.
I don't keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Well, that's kind of interesting, and something that we don't often talk about at events such as these. So when you are an actor that people start to recognize and know for playing roles on popular shows, and then that show ends, how do you navigate that?
There's in a sense of taking the initiative to not just wait for things to happen, but for me, moving into the producing and developing and directing world, whereas I'm making sure that work that I feel passionate about, making those things happen, so I'm not just waiting for someone to give me my next job. I remember as a kid, like, just being that kid who would like put on plays in the street, blocking cars and stuff like that, like on a very basic level. So, well, we kind of lose that when we become adults in a way, because we're told that you have to go through the channels and you have to climb the ladder and you have to do this. We kind of lose that childish sense of play and the idea of like, oh, I can do this, and just see what happens if I put something out there. I mean, my life right now as an actor is that I'm a professional auditioner. I'm just auditioning for the next job. But as someone who's taking hold of my career and not letting someone else dictate it, like I'm starting to write and produce and develop things so that I'm not just feeling antsy. I don't like not doing anything.
Right.
I would much rather work with my theatre company on developing a play for next year than just waiting for my next acting job, because I don't think that's not who I am. I'm not just the actor that everyone sees on TV.
If your only foothold in entertainment is as an actor, your ability to make choices about your career much smaller than if you've diversified your skill sets and diversified the output of your energy in the creative field and are seen as someone who's more than just that one role.
Yeah, and kind of relating it to this event today, when quote-unquote celebrities kind of become more and more well-known and they start working with groups and they become activists in certain kind of parts of society, people question it sometimes.
If it's a branding move,
like it's a branding move.
stuff.
It doesn't matter how successful you become, like people love to kind of put you in a box. And I suppose relating it to this event, like I'm sure you guys have come up against the idea of that, oh, you have hemophilia, so you can't really do that. Like it's probably best you don't do that, because I'm concerned for you. You kind of want to take hold of like, no, I have the ability to do this, and you want to educate people so that we aren't ignorant as to, what you guys can actually achieve, whether it's a half marathon or going swimming.
To that point of doing things that people don't necessarily think you can do, Jacob, you are a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo.
Yep.
How did that come to be a part of your life? By the way, you have like the nicest face in the world. If I saw you out and about, I would never think this guy could take me down in a second. That's working to your favor, so congratulations.
I had always had an interest in doing karate. It took a year to get my first degree and 2 years to get my second, and now I'm going for my third.
That's incredible. What does it do for you?
It keeps my joints mobile. As like a hemophilia patient, I have ankle bleeds quite often due to not being that active, like with running and walking and hiking and all that. Well, when I do it, you're stretching and you're maneuvering your ankle and your joints in certain positions that would just stretch them out, so it gets more comfortable.
How did you negotiate having hemophilia and being there at the beginning?
It was basically all my parents that did the talking. They told them that I had hemophilia and that with some certain things I might not be able to do it, and some of those I've just been able to do.
Are there moments where you have recognized a boundary or something that might be too much and opted out? Has that come up at all?
There's contact with sparring and you're in padding, so it's not really that bad, but the first time that I did it, I kind of was like, should I do this or should I not? And I started doing it and I'm still doing it, so.
Well, good for you, that's fantastic. In addition to Taekwondo, in terms of outside of school, you walk dogs at an animal rescue, right?
Yes, I do.
You volunteer at the zoo, right?
Yep.
And you are also, and you volunteer at the hospital.
I'm gonna start volunteering at the hospital too.
Yeah, so how did you get 27 hours in your day?
Yeah.
And how can we all do that in ours?
Well, it all started with the zoo. It was this program, it was called Explore Your Zoo. And you signed up, you created a page essay, and I turned it in, got accepted. I started volunteering that first year, went back again the last year, and I'm back again this year. With the animal shelter, one of my dad's closest friends at work, his wife does the Humane Society, so she kind of talked to me and Mom about doing it, so we started volunteering. And that Wednesday when I was talking to you, we got back from walking all the dogs.
And what does that experience kind of do for you? Or what have you learned anything from being involved with the Humane Society and interacting with these animals?
Pit bulls have a stereotype that they're just constantly rude, mean, vicious dogs. They're really not. The first time that I actually encountered a pit bull, not like a vicious way, but like nice cuddly way, was he was in holding and he was brought from the animal control, and so he was very like antsy, and the lady just said, be as nice as you can and he'll be nice back to you. So I walked in, sat down with him, petted him, and leashed him up and took him for a walk, and he ripped one leash and
He ripped one leash?
yeah, he tried to pull ahead of me, so I heard a snap and I was like, we better get back.
By the way, your love of pit bulls, you're very quickly becoming one of my favorite people. I just want to put that out there. Talk about like typecasting, right? Or any kind of like putting things in a box. So those are a breed of dogs that we kind of commonly just go, no, bad, but in my experience, they're some of the most loving animals. Sam C. So we talked a little bit about how a conversation came up in the house about more kids, more family. Now there's this potential for this diagnosis to continue to be a part of our lives and future kids' lives. Can you talk a little bit about that conversation and what the result of that conversation has been in the house?
It's been multiple conversations really since the day, since the day Oliver was born, and it was kind of this new shock. And at first we didn't know for sure if I was a carrier. I got tested, found out that I was indeed a carrier, which, most of you in this room know what that means, that there's a significant chance of having another child with hemophilia. There was lots of drama in those first few years, lots of great, wonderful times, lots of overcoming obstacles and things like that. But certainly as a result of that, we talked a little bit about, do we have another child? If we do have another child, are we prepared to have another child with hemophilia? And I think ultimately we discovered we are certainly prepared. We figured out we can do it with one. I think we figure out how to do it with two. And I know lots of people in this room even have figured out how to do it with multiple children with hemophilia. Over the course of 2 or 3 years now, we've gone back and forth. It's a constant, nobody can make up their mind in our house. Mostly me, if you ask my husband, but it's back and forth. We looked into adoption. I did a lot of research into adoption, domestic, international. We actually even looked into potentially adopting a child with hemophilia. I actually put myself on a list never got a match, kid with hemophilia, till I happen to be pregnant right now. Once I got pregnant, I got all sorts of matches with kids with hemophilia that didn't A lot of you may be familiar with IVF. As part of IVF, you create embryos, and one of the things that they can do is they can actually test those embryos before they implant them to find out if the hemophilia gene exists. And then if it does, they can implant one of the embryos that doesn't have the mutation. So we looked at that. So it was a constant back and forth. We never quite knew what we were going to do. And then actually one day, out of the blue, I was explaining this to a group of girlfriends. We get together once a year, and she happened to say, I actually have some embryos that I'm not going to use that happen to be in storage. You and Justin are welcome to take the embryos. And so it was one of those like, wow, that's something to think about. And then we did. We thought about it. I am now 6-7 months pregnant with a child that I don't share any DNA with. But the great thing about it is I get to carry the child, I get to breastfeed the child. It's already heard, his big brother, her big brother's voice and her father's voice.
What kind of reactions or responses did you get?
Most people that I tell are pretty positive about it, yeah.
I'm not speaking for myself, but just trying to think through, I'm sure there are people who found that to be a little bit off-putting.
It's something I've thought about, I still think about. There's lots of different opinions out there, but I think there tends to be on one side people, I've actually seen it from outside the community probably more, is this idea of, that you're a carrier, why would you knowingly, have a child? That's the one side, and I think it tends to be, there's some negativity around that. Then on kind of the other extreme, I also see mother bashing, actually, this kind of hemo mom bashing, and see this stuff about how dare you have guilt about your children or whatever, and you're sending a message that there's something wrong or unwanted or bad about your first child. If A, you decide not to have more children, or you take a route like I'm taking, I understand that perspective, but there's absolutely, no way in hell that is true. In my case, Oliver is the best thing that has ever happened to our family. And I think in some ways, having to deal with the hemophilia and stuff has probably made us better parents all the way around. One of my big fears was what happens someday when my son says to me, Mom, so you decided for the second child to basically avoid the hemophilia gene, whichever route we took. Would you have done the same thing if you'd known about me, or do you wish that I hadn't had hemophilia, or whatever that question is, however it exactly is asked. I expect probably I will get it someday, and I'll probably break down in tears, and I'll cry, and I'll hug him, and I'll tell him that absolutely not, I wouldn't trade him for anything in the entire world. Certainly it's something, I have thought a lot about, I continue to think about, and I probably will be forced to think about again.
The choice that's best for you, your health, and your family, and how that is your right, and your family's right. The blog you had written earlier this week, what was the closing line about biology has the least to do with parenting?
Biology is the least of what makes someone a parent.
Yeah, and I think, Sam Underwood, that's something that I know that you can relate to some degree as well.
I lost my father when I was 12. He passed away very young, 44, from a heart attack. My parents were divorced, and my mum was, and she still is seeing the same person now, who I do consider as a dad. I have a huge respect for him. He's one of the most loved men in my life, but it's different. It is different because there's not the biology there, but also they were just very different men. I've discovered, kind of in retrospect, I have found parents throughout my life in different, in different places with different people. I will say that losing my dad was a defining factor in my life, not just because of all the obvious things, but I absolutely believe this, and which is why I'm such a strong advocate for these seminars. Obstacles and adversity truly makes you a stronger person. Having a kid with hemophilia, like you said, has made you a better parent. Doing Taekwondo, you're a Taekwondoer. You know that there's a certain sense, I'm sure, that when you do this, you feel differently about doing Taekwondo and what it means to you than what other people, because they don't have to think about those things. It's a bigger win, it's a bigger success when you do spar and you do overcome that. There's a strength with that. Yeah, losing my dad was definitely the biggest adversity, I would say. The least superficial adversity I have in my life. But I take that with me everywhere. I think it makes me a better actor. I absolutely know it's going to make me the best dad in the world. Like all those kind of things, that you plug it into every corner of your life.
When you lost your dad, you were 12, so your
12.
sister was
9. No, she's 9.
Oh, she's 9? I
Yeah,
thought
she
she
was
was much younger.
Yeah, no. She's 3 years younger than me.
So what was that like? Were you cognizant of that at 12?
I mean, also dealing with divorced parents at 9 is really weird as well, because I felt like some weird person who oh my god, my family's not normal. So to top it off at 12 with actually losing my dad was like, all right, what's going on? I'm not sure what is going on here. It wasn't until I became more towards 14, 15, where I was becoming more of a human. When I started to become my own person, having a defined personality of okay, this is what I'm going to do with my life, and my sister was going, more towards, discovering her way. That's when I realized that the connection was important. Me moving away when I was 19, when my sister was 16, and moving to the other side of the world, where she can't just, hey, can I have a chat? She needed me in a different way when she was 16, for those couple of years, when I was in the grand scheme, kind of having fun being over in America and learning my craft. I don't think I was consciously acting that way towards my sister and my mum, but in retrospect, I definitely did do that. Sure. My mum's an uber strong person. She just she made me the person I am today. But there were certain things that she needed from another almost adult in her life that in retrospect, I did feel the responsibility to do that. I hope in a way it's made me, again, cognizant of the fact that even now in my relationship, that I hope to be married in the next couple of years, you kind of take all those learning points from when you are going through whatever you're going through and you plug them into your life.
When I lost my brother, it was in a year where there was 3 major losses. I suddenly lost my grandmother, who was a parent figure. I lost my brother, and there was another huge loss. I caught myself just spiraling and going to a place where it felt like nothing I did was going to help me escape this inevitable life of pain and loss and things being taken. But then there was a moment where I realized, okay, you can go down that path if you want. That's a short life. That's a short, sad life.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do is take all those pieces and then just let them inform the way you live. You are still going to experience more loss and more adversity. You cannot escape it, but if you at least put the focus on, I'm taking the best of all of this and driving full speed ahead and nothing is going to stop that, you are going to create a greater impact on this world than if you just become kind of obsessed with your own turmoil. Jacob, you were sharing with me a little bit about what you hope to do one day in terms of career and pursuit, and talking about good output and turning adversity and obstacles into something positive you can contribute. Would you share a little bit about what you hope to do one day?
I want to be a hematology nurse. I want to help patients who come in nervous, like I used to, and help them overcome their fears, because it's not all bad. It gets better. It's like a roller coaster. You go up, and you go down, and there's back up again. My nurse, Noelle, she came over to our house, and I still had my cord at the time. She had taught me how to self-infuse, and I had got it every single time that she got it, and she had told my mom that that was not the best thing for me to get it on the first time, because the next day, when I had to do it for real, I missed it, and I had a meltdown. I could not stop crying. I called her at 5:30 in the morning. She answered. She was like, it's gonna be okay.
Do you still find, because I have these moments where if after 2 sticks I can't do it, I start saying, I'm 29 years old. I've been doing this for a very long time. It's the most important thing I do with my life. How come I'm terrible at it? Do you have those moments still?
Yes, I do.
Because I don't think they go away. I think they stick around for life.
Yeah.
Sam, you now on the board, is there a piece of advice or anything that you tend to give to families when they first come into the community to let them know that you will be okay?
That it will be okay, absolutely. And probably, to tell them to look around. Everybody in this room has done it to some extent. I tell them, if you can, go to an event, reach out, introduce yourself to another family. That's really where you're going to figure it out.
As you get older, are you participating in your medical care as decisions go on as you're in your teens?
I have lately, actually. We go back and forth with my doctor about my ankles, and it's just a complete battle, but they're better, I guess, if you want to say that.
Are you wanting to do something your doctor doesn't want you to do it?
Yes.
I know, I've been there, done that, so that's why I was...
Because of my ankles, I've been on the same dose since I was probably 5 years old. I mean, they increased it by a couple hundred, but that didn't do anything, so we've just been trying to get it increased, and he's just said no. So just recently I had an ankle bleed, and Mom called Children's and complained, and he was not in town, so he gets in town at the end of this month, so she's going to call again. So
I didn't start self-infusing until I was 18 and going to college, and the doctor was like, you're getting a port or you gotta learn self-infuse, and that was sort of the trigger for me. So I was late to the game at being vocal. I wish I had started a little bit sooner, but I'm glad I started when I did.
Your friends, are they interested in learning about hemophilia?
my two closest friends, both of them have researched about it and what I can do and can't do, and one of them's terrified of blood, so they don't want to watch me do it. But the other one has seen me do it before, and she's been interested in it.
My girlfriend has celiac disease. There's almost a divide of friends between people really wanting to truly understand what it is so that they can be as accommodating as possible. And then there's and they're still good friends, but people who just it's almost too much stuff for them to take on board.
Christy mentioned it earlier, and I've mentioned my brother. He passed while at college. He fell off his prophy regimen. He took a minor head bump, went to bed, didn't treat it, went to bed, and never woke up. And my mom used to say, if I didn't tell Adam he had hemophilia, he wouldn't know. And she said it because he didn't bleed much. He was an extremely active kid. She took care of a lot of the logistics. I was kind of the opposite. I wanted to be playing basketball. I wanted to be super physical. Did I do some damage? Did I cause some trouble? Yeah, a little bit. But I never forgot that I had hemophilia because I was always challenging it.
With your career choice, you were always concerned with our growing children's career choices about medical care and options, insurance, and things like that. How have you worked your way around that?
I'd say more than anything, since getting out of school, I've just been very cognizant. Anytime I've made a life choice, changing states, changing from New York to California, especially during the implementation of the ACA, was something of a debacle, and getting introduced to Kaiser Permanente was something of a debacle. But just always staying cognizant of it and never letting it be something that I was like, oh, I don't want to deal with that.
How do you feel about camp, hearing their stories about camp? You feel like, yeah, he's going to go, or heck no, never, no way, like I was before Nicholas ever went to camp?
Oh, absolutely, he'll go to camp. I can't wait for him to go to camp. I went to, that sounds terrible. Although a week, for mom and dad to have some fun is okay too, but, absolutely, when Oliver's old enough, we'll send him. I think it'll be a great experience for him, hopefully.
Well, thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you to Jacob, Sam, and Sam for being excellent panelists, and to Christy and the chapter for having us, to Midwest National Cornerstone for continuing to sponsor this program, and to Ryan for manning the cameras over there. And thank you, and have a great rest of this weekend. For videos from other Powering Through events, visit poweringthrough.org. If you'd like more information on NCHS, visit their website at nc-hs.com. Or for more information on Believe Digi, visit believedigi.com.